Hola amigos, yo soy Javi y esto es VirtualVision VR. Como siempre, espero que estéis bien. Y si no, mucha fuerza para todos. Hoy nos vamos a ir de visita a VRroom. Vamos a ir a ver una proyección de Monet. La verdad es que esta proyección iba después de aquella que habíamos visto anteriormente de los dinosaurios, pero entre que no iban de lo mismo y para facilitar la visibilidad decidí dividirlo en dos. Por eso en alguna conversación hacemos referencia a lo de los dinosaurios. Y bueno, este día tampoco estaba yo, que era el mismo día que lo de los dinosaurios. Así que, sin más dilación, ¡adelante vídeo!
Y ahora vamos al museo. No, la pintura no se ve muy allá.
Do you know this
¿Y
painting?
qué tiene que ver Monet con la historia
You've
esta?
probably seen it before, right?
No sé, ahora está contando otra cosa, ¿no?
But any idea why it's famous? Well, like many of the best works of art, it was disruptive, and most people hated it. But the painter George Seurat was a bit of an outcast who marched to the beat of his own drum.
Ah, que nos van a meter la pintura o algo, ¿qué?
So where did the story of Le Grand Chat, a piece of art that changed the world, begin? George was born in Paris into a well-off middle-class family. A mum, a dad, 3 siblings. Life was good. But when George was little, tragedy struck. George's younger brother died, and his dad abandoned the family, leaving his mum in charge of a broken home. George retired into himself. The world around him was in chaos. His friends would come to describe him as secretive, eccentric, even solitary. And just like George's family had been torn apart, the art world was also in turmoil. At the time, the Academy of Fine Arts dominated the industry, and if you weren't in this club, you were nobody. It was made up of a strict hierarchy with the most prestigious paintings featuring gods and myths, stories that weren't real. The Academy was all about perfection and precision. Paintings had to be smooth, with no traces of brushstrokes. But a group of rebels, the Impressionists, started to resist. George was still a child when he witnessed them opposing the Academy on every front. The Impressionists focused on the real world. They captured the slices of life with large brushstrokes. They celebrated color and lighting over precision. And they rejected ranking each other. They were revolutionaries, and they made a lasting impression on young George. That's the world George grew up in. But encouraged by his mum, he first joined the Academy's art school and was on track for a stable classical career. But by the time he was 20, he'd become frustrated with the Academy's standards. So when he finally got to meet the Impressionists in person at the 4th exhibition, he defected to their side. Some think that this was because George was excited to feature taboo subjects, or that, ever the outcast, he saw himself in these rebels of the art world. But the truth is, George was fascinated by the Impressionists' use of colour. There was something in it that only he could see. A seed of an idea took root and grew into an obsession. Unlike the Impressionists, who often went straight to canvas, George worked on countless sketches and oil paint studies.
Pues nada, que tengo el mando hecho una puta mierda. Voy a tener que pillarme otro.
Practice, George was finally ready. He bought a huge canvas and got to work on what we know today as Le Grand Chat. He was 25 and had just invented what he called vision, and it does exactly what it says on the tin.
Menos David y el Tony.
After 2 years of hard
Bueno, no
work,
sabemos.
George was finally ready to unveil his new
Tony,
painting
hi, Tony.
Impressionist exhibition.
Dime.
Ah, ¿qué
Other than the
coño?
Impressionists weren't
Where you
just
from? ¿De dónde eres?
Their exhibitions were big, social, and
Cerca de
commercial.
Andorra.
They were no longer
Ah, mira,
underdogs,
hombre.
David to the Academy's Goliath. In a way,
Nosotros sur.
they had become a new
Bueno,
academy,
sur,
and they'd never been more
norte.
divided.
Yo soy...
The Impressionists had split into 2 groups, refusing to exhibit together. On one side, they had the classic Impressionists,
Te hago el chiste como se hizo, ¿o
and they
no?
had George's mates, who were more experimental in their work.
¿Qué pedazo de
It took a
trenes
lot
tiene
of
Cantabria,
convincing, and some Impressionists even boycotted the sale in protest. But George was finally accepted into the exhibition.
Madre mía. Qué San Lucío.
Accepted's probably not the right
Mira, hombre, van
word.
talando gente, se van
Impressionists were
animando.
disruptors, but that doesn't mean they were open to being disrupted themselves. George's work was hung in a small separate room away from the main show.
Qué gacho pescado.
Clearly, it didn't just divide colours, it divided people. The unveiling of Le Grand Jatte was a total flop. People couldn't step back and look at the Grand Jatte.
Lo que están escribiendo en la
All they
pared.
saw were dots, points in French, and so they called George's technique pointillism. They saw the dots, but missed the
Hola,
point.
culo.
And to make matters worse, the critics were scathing.
¿Con qué pega, Julo?
George had failed to win over the crowd, but he didn't give up. He continued to show Le Grand Jatte, and time again it was received with the same confusion. People wondered, what does this painting mean? What am I supposed to feel looking at this? Is it a political statement with class boundaries destroyed? Was mixing soldiers, a nurse, a courtesan, a single woman in the same composition a message? Or was Le Grand Jatte a comment on the isolation of people, with no one looking at each other? A comment on divided families with absent fathers? And what about the woman in the middle, the only one facing us head on? Was she George's secret girlfriend, Madeline Knobloch?
Los avatares andan un poco raros.
His friends paints a different story. He could have picked
Poco
any
bastante.
subject.
Nada, está explicando un poquito por qué cada escena del cuadro y
George's
eso. Yo me
interest
entero a
wasn't in the
rato.
message. He was focused on finding a new way of painting colours. People resisted his work because
El
in many ways
Mesozoico pone aquí,
he was
70
ahead of
millones
his
de
time.
años.
Sí, yo me he dado cuenta que el que entra se tiene que tragar desde el principio las
So
cosas.
despite the harsh critics, he never abandoned his
amigo.
signature style.
Ah,
Sí,
de otra
Clearly, he had a
cosa.
point.
sí, no estamos viendo lo mismo
But
todos.
George was burning his
Ah,
candle at
claro,
both ends,
lo estás viendo
barely
desde el
stopping for
principio,
meals.
Ismael.
And
Sí.
at 31,
Yo estoy viendo el Mesozoico.
door for what would turn out
Claro,
to be
nosotros
the last
estamos viendo un cuadro de Monet hablando sobre el cuadro.
because he finally introduced his mother
Hostia,
to his pregnant
yo estoy viendo
girlfriend,
dinosaurio.
and there you
Claro,
go.
porque esto va después de lo tuyo.
George was trying to bring together his 2 divided lives. But he never got to see what his whole family
vaya
really
rollo, ¿no?
looked.
Nada, tío.
George died soon.
Estamos en
after
el mismo
from
nivel,
diphtheria.
pero en
The rest of his
diferente.
family dropped back into the shadow,
Época.
dying within a few short years and forever sealing the mystery of George's personal. George's only legacy is his work.
Uy,
And the
ha
thing is,
desaparecido
he
el
isn't
caso.
with us by chance. No matter how
Es una
divided and
bestia.
secret his life was, his friends and mother worked for years to have George's art recognized after his death, and it paid off. George finally went from the underdog to the icon, and Le Grand Jatte was recognized as a cornerstone of divisionist movement. And it's a painting that has us talking, speculating, analyzing and dreaming together. And just as our minds fill the gaps between his dots of paint, we can also try and make sense of the mystery around George by filling in the gaps between what we know of his life. George may have never seen this in his lifetime, but Le Grand Jatte brings people together as we project what we see and feel onto it, making it really a timeless work of art. And isn't that, in the end, what great art?
Voy a comer aceituna mientras.
Madre mía.
Oh, muy bien.
A ver qué más.
¿Habrá algo más?
Como no hay algo más me
Sí.
duermo.
Hombre, muchos son tío, no te... Ay, coño, que me hago con la aceituna.
Ten cuidado.
Que... Hola, David.
Hi,
Hi. Where you from?
Italy. And you?
Italy.
Oh,
Oh,
Spain. South
Oh.
Spain. Aquí nadie habla. El Hulo. El Hulo. Hola, Hulo. Yo, es que te lo siento, pero yo cada vez que leo Hulo se me viene...
Voy ahora por la época cuaternaria.
¿Y
uy.
tú, David, qué es lo que estás viendo? Tú estás en nuestro nivel, en el cuadro, ¿no?
Pero seguro que hay aquí no hay discoteca.
Mira, Hulo, la gana casondo que tiene. Verá que voy a ser un novio americano ahora.
Qué Dios más largo.
Yo creo que esto se ha quedado en negro ya, ¿eh?
Ala. Ahora viene un zombie.
Bueno amigos, ¿qué os ha parecido? Coincidiréis conmigo en que no tenía mucho que ver. Y Angelote, muchas gracias, estás hecho un artista. Y nada, con esto terminamos. Como siempre, si os ha gustado, darle a me gusta y compartirlo a tope. Si no estáis suscritos, ¿a qué esperáis? Suscribiros. Un abrazo fuerte y mucha fuerza para todos.